Join us on the program right now. The editor-in-chief of Officer.com, Mr. Frank Borelli, is with us. Frank, how you doing tonight?
I am well, Cam. How are you?
I'm good. Glad you could join us on the program this evening. I haven't seen too many media outlets talking about the 2010 preliminary annual uniform crime report, which is surprising because it does have some really good news in it.
You're absolutely right. I can't imagine. I mean, but if you can't sensationalize it, then you can't sell around it. So why would they want to report it?
I guess. But look, I mean, there's nothing to shake a stick at. 5.5% drop in the violent crime rate compared with data from 2009, which had also shown about a 5% decline, as I understand it, right?
According to that article, yes, sir.
So I mean, this is great news. The New York Times reported that experts were puzzled as to why the violent crime rate is declining when we're in a recession, when the economy is not great. The expectations are that crime would go up. Is that the conventional wisdom among law enforcement, Frank? That crime tends to follow the economic track, the economic health of a community?
Well, I mean, all we can go on is what we have from historical data, and when you look back at prior times in our country's history when we've had an economic recession or economic challenges, we have seen crime rates grow up. Most of the time, though, you see an increase in property crimes as well as personal crimes. The crimes they're specifically talking about in this article appear to be more personal crimes, rape, robbery, murder, not property crimes where you might see an increase in theft or vandalism or things like that. I don't really see that addressed.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you look around, and I realize that this is not a perfect snapshot, and I'm not trying to say that the entire decrease in violent crime can be attributed to gun ownership. But I'll tell you one thing, Frank, this notion that we hear from gun control advocates that more guns equal more crime has proven to be false. I mean, you've had really robust years in terms of firearm sales over the past couple of years. Gun ownership, in terms of the raw numbers of American gun owners, all-time high, and we don't seem to be committing a lot of crime, strangely enough.
No, I think you're 100% right. Unfortunately, there are probably people in the current administration of our government who aren't listening to your show. But, there's the old joke about our current president being one of the best gun salesmen in the world because everybody's worried about what he was going to do with gun control laws. And just recently, there was an article about how he had made a comment at a meeting that they were working on gun control laws behind the scenes because we all know that transparency matters, and he's promised a great deal of it. So we do things behind the scenes where it's not transparent at all. But I think it speaks to the American people and what kind of heart we have in general, and our preparedness outlook, our practical outlook, our realistic outlook, and our responsibility levels that, like you said, gun ownership's higher than it's ever been, and crime rates aren't rocketing beside it. I think somebody needs to eat a little bit of crow, and I don't think it's us.
No, I don't think it's us either. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, and I keep dinging Mayor Bloomberg because violent crime did go up in every reported category in New York City. And, my attitude is Bloomberg's been spending a lot of time sending his minions around the country trying to blame other states for the crime in New York City. And maybe the mayor will use this finally as the excuse he needs to refocus his efforts on New York City itself. But,
I wouldn't bet on that.
No, I wouldn't either. New York City, you look at New Jersey, and New Jersey's last big, gun control initiative was a one-gun-a-month law. Every reporting metropolitan area in New Jersey, with the exception of one, saw a violent crime increase in all reported categories. Then you look at, places like Virginia, where we've got, restaurant carry passed in the last year, Tennessee, where restaurant carry was passed, Arizona, where constitutional carry was passed last year. The crime rate went down in all three of those states, Frank.
Well, but that's nothing that should be a surprise to people who are believers in the Second Amendment, and you know this as well as I do. When you look at the number of states that have passed shall-issue laws and the number of states that have passed stand your ground or castle doctrine, you look at the number of states who have empowered the citizen to righteously defend themselves again, the personal crime rates go down across the board in all of those states. No criminal in his right mind wants to go out and risk committing a crime to get – he doesn't want to risk getting killed to commit the crime. He doesn't want to risk facing a citizen who will stand up and defend themselves and their family and their property for what he might get out of it. It just doesn't work. They all go to places where they have easier targets, easier victims.
Yeah, yeah. New York Times says the odds of being murdered or robbed are now less than half of what they were in the early 1990s, which was coincidentally enough the last time that a major piece of gun control legislation was enacted by Congress. So, there are all kinds of theories as to why this is happening. Everything from urban revitalization, everything from the demographics of cities. If there are fewer young people, there are fewer young people who can join gangs. Do you have what are you hearing at officer.com, Frank? Is there a lot of discussion about this?
It's really not that much of a topic of discussion in amongst my peers and the people I discuss it with. I think the outlook that I mentioned earlier, that of the general American who realizes that, number one, we are seeing economic hardship continue. No matter what kind of recovery they're talking about, it's still hard for the average middle-class family to put gas in their car and food on their table.
Yeah.
They're still facing that challenge. There's still a financial hardship in the country. We're seeing the American people recognize that and prepare to defend themselves as governments have to cut. And government at all levels have to cut manpower in law enforcement, and now California, thanks to a court decision, is going to be cutting loose 32,000 inmates at some point.
Mm-hmm.
We've had this conversation before. You start cutting police manpower, you start putting criminals out on the streets in greater numbers and shorter time frames, and the average citizen's not stupid. They know that they need to be prepared to defend themselves and to do things. Now, that also helps build that community mental outlook, if you will, where we're all going to hang tough together and help each other out and be more alert, be more aware, be more prepared. I think it's showing the strength of America in a way that newspapers and the mainstream media can't sensationalize and sell, because it's not, it doesn't bleed, so it doesn't lead, however
Right.
you want to say it. But it's a good thing when you look at it.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And, I will say this. I saw there was an armed citizen story that we covered from San Antonio earlier this week, and the San Antonio News Express, the local paper down there, actually did highlight the fact that this home invasion that had been thwarted by an armed citizen occurred in a neighborhood where there have been, an increase in burglaries. And the paper noted that neighbors have gotten together. They've started a neighborhood watch. Many of them say that they've become gun owners. So the paper actually did notice this and did point this out, which I thought was great. And I hope that more papers and more media outlets will start asking these questions when they go out to a story like this. Start asking the neighbors, are you guys concerned? Have you guys started talking? Are you guys working together? Because I think they might be surprised at how often they would hear the answer being yes.
Oh, I think you're right, but I think that some of the leadership in those media outlets is in denial and doesn't want to hear those answers, so they won't task those reporters to go out there and do that. And truth being fair to them, when you're looking at the major metropolitan areas like New York and Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, they're so busy running to get their 30 seconds on this murder or that break-in, or, they don't have time to be thorough and pay that kind of attention anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. All right. Now, I do want to ask you, we were talking about the budget cuts. I ran across a story earlier today in Camden, New Jersey, which is, Camden's got some big problems and have for years and years. But at the Camden County Jail, they just laid off 58 corrections officers. They're down to, I think, 216, down from 281 8 months ago. Officer just got assaulted there in the jail. Elevators are malfunctioning. Police say that response time to emergencies within the jail has doubled, if not tripled, because of the malfunctioning elevators. Frank, are we going to hear more of these stories in the months ahead? Are there going to be another round of budget cuts and officer staffing levels that are affected, you think?
I don't think we've seen the end of it yet. I think that we're going to see, until you see real estate values go up, and we have to remember that these municipal and county governments, state governments too, to some extent, their budgets depend on property tax. So until the real estate market really recovers and the home values go back up, because that's what they did their budgets on and hired and filled. I mean, they don't. Most municipalities that I'm familiar with, they spend every penny that they've got coming in. Well, when you've got a third less pennies coming in, you got to lower your overhead by a third. The federal government's not giving them grant money and help and assistance because it doesn't have it either. It lives on our income tax. So I think that we really are. We still haven't seen the end of it, in my opinion. Those folks that I talk to, the economic hardship, as much as they're getting, the stories that are coming out about economic recovery and the Dow's back up. I don't think that's necessarily a realistic picture. And until the real estate values come up back to where they were, we're not going to see the hiring rates go up. We're going to see people continue to be laid off. We're going to see budget cuts continue in corrections and law enforcement, fire and EMS. Unfortunately, is also going to get affected, and it's going to fall more and more to the daily American the individual citizen to defend themselves, to help take care of their community.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, listen, Frank, I'm always glad to have you on the show, sir. Appreciate you coming on tonight, and we'll do this again very soon.
It's always a pleasure, Cam. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir. Frank Borelli, editor-in-chief of Officer.com, with us on Cam and Company.